Hey everybody, it's Brian, and we've got the crew here, the Hawk Blogger crew here. I heard from a number of you about where did the podcast go. We haven't had this one last week, although Jeff and Will did a great one a couple weeks ago. A number of us couldn't make it. Softy, had some scheduling issues. I had some scheduling issues. We're back. And I think we picked the timing extremely well because we've got a lot to talk about. I'm not just talking about the Eagles, the victory over the Eagles, or this massive matchup against the Jaguars. We've got to spend a little time talking about Nathan Ernst's facial hair. Yeah, I mean, we were just getting started. And I figured we should get the show started with this, but typically, November is, Movember for people that don't follow, right? You're supposed to grow facial hair in an attempt to bring, awareness to prostate cancer and men's health issues. Is this a statement against men's health, Nathan, or is there something else that led to this?
It's a statement against my wife, who despises it. As the great Bruce Arians said, no risk it, no biscuit. And so I risked it. And I have some regrets, but it's here to stay for a little while.
I like it, dude. Evan's got something to say. He's our resident fashion expert. So
I'll have you know, I've gotten a lot of compliments on it.
Oh no!
I don't know how many of them are sarcastic, but
I want to clarify. You look great, Nathan. It is.
Oh well, thank you.
I don't think it was a tragic decision or anything. I was just wondering, when was the last time you fully shaved your face like this?
So it's been a while. I mean, I've done a bunch of different stuff with it. I've had some truly awful facial hair, but I've done just the standard beard for a long time now. It's probably been at least 3 or 4 years since I've done anything, taking it off like this. So yeah, I go outside and my face is cold. I can feel my skin. It's bizarre. If you guys have a beard, if you had a beard for a while, I recommend it. Give it a shot. Just go mustache, straight mustache.
I cannot do mustache. It would be super creepy if I did mustache. Although I am getting some pressure to grow my hair out for the first time in a long time, and that could be ugly. I get this big, just microphone. It's not a good look. So I like it, by the way, Nathan. I think it's very hipster forward of you. You fit right in with our other hipster on the show.
Which one's that? Is that Evan? Who's our
hipster?
That's
Evan. Have you seen his pictures? I mean,
I'm a hipster?
The shoes on those guy? That guy? I mean,
Hey, that's modern. That's modern.
Hey, so before we get into all the other stuff, Evan, give us an update on your wedding planning, man. How's that going?
Oh my gosh, we were talking about this before the show. I hope my fiance isn't listening, but like a wise man once said before the show, leave all the planning to the woman. And I am completely hands-off approach, letting her make all the important decisions. I am there for input and advice counseling, but I do not make any actual decisions. So yeah, that's my role. It's going well.
That's not limited to the wedding planning. You know that, right? That's just the start of the rest of your life.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm tied down the rest of my life. I know. Freedom's gone. Yep.
Jeff, what about you, man? Welcome back. Good to see you. Any things we can make fun of you about?
I'm growing this beard. It's 3 different colors. But, some blonde in here, some red.
I'm always jealous of the people that get the white patch. Have you seen those? Some people have it in the beard or in their hair. They just get a one white patch. It looks pretty great.
I was telling Evan earlier. I tweeted him. I know you guys are getting hockey over there, and I'm a Canadian, so I can help you guys learn. Usually, there's a big hockey net in my bed. I remember when Danny Kelly was on. He was making fun of me about it. There was a hockey net in my basement. So if you guys need help with that, I can help you out. That's something I grew up around, and I can give you tons of stuff to make fun of me about, but I'll take that off the show this week.
Yeah, I have to say, and we're already way off topic, but I can't get myself into hockey at all, man. There was zero level of excitement about. All right, am I having mic issues? You guys hear me?
Yeah, your mic's doing the thing again.
Damn it! All right, you guys talk. I'll try to figure it out.
I was just gonna say, Jeff, I think you might have to explain the hockey rules to me because I don't think I know 15% of hockey.
Yeah, it's it's kind of like a mix of soccer and lacrosse in one. It's a basic game. It's fast though, man. It's fun. It's maybe the best live sport.
Somebody, I don't know if it was you, Jeff, or maybe it was Nathan or somebody else told me on Twitter today or tweeted at me and said hockey is basically like 15 Russell Wilsons all running around on ice and giving each other Cam Chancellor hits. And I just thought
that's not bad. That's not bad.
So
that wasn't me, but it sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Out of the meantime, Evan, you've been getting a lot of Twitter play for your T-shirt. Why don't you get into that a little bit? Talk about the shirt, where it came from, where the proceeds are going, because that's been blowing up.
Yeah, as you guys know, I am a very negative Twitter follow. It's just horrible following me. It's the Seahawks are going to lose every single week. Injuries are going to happen. Offense is going to sputter. It's horrible. So, no, just kidding. But obviously, I'm an extremely optimistic person, just kind of in general. And after they lost to the Skins, after they lost to all these losses that we weren't expecting, I was like, you know what? Let's run the damn table. But we're gonna do it better than the Packers. We're gonna run the table. Russ is gonna finish off with an MVP campaign, and we're gonna go into the playoffs hot. And I just kept telling myself it like every single morning. I was like, we're gonna run the table. It's gonna happen. Like bar none. We're running the table. Like no other decision. And I just somehow forced myself into believing this. So yeah, we're gonna run the table. Simple and sweet. I think it's gonna happen. I talked to Will a couple days ago, right after the Eagles game, when we were all like on cloud 9 on Sunday night. I was like, what if we created Run the Damn Table shirts and we gave all the proceeds to Ben's Fund, which we support here at Hogblogger. All donations go to this local charity created by John Schneider, general manager of the Seahawks, that supports children with families on the autism or families with children on the autism spectrum. Basically, they just financially support them, make life easier for them, and support them in tons of different ways coming alongside these families. So they do really cool, great work. You can find it on my Twitter. It's my pinned tweet /Evan on HB for Hawkblogger. It's my pinned tweet. All proceeds go to Ben's Fund. So basically, they the site we went through pays out like monthly. So whenever they pay me through my PayPal account or whatever happens, I'll just screenshot it, and then I'll screenshot the donation just for the sake of transparency to Ben's Fund. So yeah, all credit to William Cornell, our Rain City series document. I can't even say that word. Or Rain City series filmmaker. He created that design. Super cool work. So yeah, we're super excited about it. We think it's a great cause. Good shirt. Hopefully the Seahawks run the damn table. So
very nice. Can you guys hear me okay?
Much better.
All right. Hopefully that remains. I'm going to paste the link into the chat for the show, and we'll also add it into the description so people can find it.
Cool.
Right. Jeff, lead us. Fearless leader. Host us. Where should we start?
All right. First of all, Evan, I just want to say I was blown away with your positivity. After the Niners game, the Falcons game, like I found it hard to get positive about this team. Me and Will had a real deep talk after the Falcons game on our show about where this team is. We were talking about the whole Pete Carroll. We got a little deep and crazy. So I gotta say, man, your positivity got to me this week. I was impressed. I'm trying the uber positive approach this week with the team, see how it works. But I want to show you up for that. But yeah, back to what you were saying, Brian. That game was awesome. The Seahawks hadn't had a regular season game like that maybe since the Saints game, the Super Bowl year. They just owned Philly from the start of the game, and I know Evan's been preaching this all year. Look what happens when the Seahawks have a great start and they're playing with a lead. And, man, I just didn't see that game coming. I know a lot of you thought we were going to win, but just the all-around team effort from the defense, the coaching staff, the quarterback, even though running game, the offensive line. The Seahawks were so good at so many levels, and we really haven't seen that this year. I remember we did the show. We were all jacked up after that Houston game where it was really Russell versus Watson. It's kind of a one-on-one duel. And I know we were pumped up after the Rams game, a game the Seahawks defense kind of stole on the road with all those turnovers. But there hasn't really been a game this season. Maybe the New England game last year is the best comparable, or that Saints game on Monday night in the Super Bowl year, but where top to bottom, the team was so much – they were just so complete, and they were so much better than what everyone thought was the best and most complete team in football. So coming out of that game, I just had so many different thoughts, and there were so many different players I want to hit on. So let's start with you, Evan. Or Brian. How about you, Brian?
No, I'm fine starting with Evan. I'm just I'm really curious what you guys, if you can, capture what your thoughts were before the game, what were you really expecting, what were you thinking, worrying about, and then what was different? Like, what was the biggest surprise? I'd love to hear that from you guys. Evan, you can start.
Yeah, I think obviously we talk about Russell Wilson and his incredible 3-touchdown performance on Sunday night, and converting third down after third down, all the pre-snap motions like we saw in Chalk Talk or whatever it's called by Brock Heward. I don't know if you guys saw that. That was super cool, the breakdown on that. Obviously, Russell Wilson had a huge part to play on Sunday night, but I think the most impressive portion of that game for me was the Seattle defense and how they came to play that night. We did not – I mean, if you saw tons of tweets on Saturday and Sunday, Friday, Thursday. Everybody was like, the Seahawks are going to have to put up 30-plus. And I was one of those people. I was like, the Eagles are going to put up crazy amount of points. There's no way we contain them. Carson Wentz is going to get his touchdowns. We're not going to be able to stop their running game. End of story. And look what happened. The Seahawks defense came out balling. And, we made good second-half adjustments to stop the run. Obviously they started out hot, but we shut down Carson Wentz. Our corners played well. Shaq played well. Byron or Maxwell, except for a couple plays, really played well. I really felt like he actually played a solid game, except for those two just ridiculous Wentz plays. But I'm so impressed with how our defense showed up and just balled out on Sunday night. Bobby Wagner was incredible. I'm just blown away by our defensive performance on Sunday night. Our offense was lights out, but I was really excited about our defense.
How about you, Nathan?
Yeah, going into the game, I didn't think they were just going to lose, but I didn't think that. Well, I thought they were going to lose, but I wasn't sure about it. I wasn't really down on the game. I was excited and I wanted to see what was going to happen, but I figured, they were probably going to lose. They probably weren't the better team. And obviously everything they did in that game, they didn't just win. They didn't have one of their crazy games where they kind of snuck something out. They just showed up. They played a complete game. They didn't do anything too weird. They seemed to kind of optimize their game plan, and they just looked like the team that we kind of all, I think, thought they could be all year long, and they hadn't really, shown. And so just, the complete game, the clean game, and just to show up and, take it to a really good team right from the start and just kind of take the lead and run away with it. It was a good game, it was a close game, but they were solidly in command of that game for pretty much the entire time. So it was just really cool to see all the things that we think this team can be, for that to show up.
Yeah, it's funny, I was really expecting the defense to take a decent step back when Cam Chancellor and Sherman were out. And I'd kind of figured maybe a 20 to 25% regression might have been realistic. They were allowing 18 points, but maybe they'd end up allowing 21, 22 points after that. And it's almost like there was this trust fall, right? You expected them to be coming down, but then elevators going up on Shaquille Griffin, elevators going up on Bradley McDougall, elevators going up on, some of the players on the defensive line and some of the other young guys that have been rotating in. And so they caught us, they caught the team. And instead of, dropping precipitously, the defense is stabilized. Like it's not significantly different than the defense it was beforehand. And how do we know that? Because they just faced, another number one offense that I think is better than the Rams offense and held them to 10 points. I mean, that was remarkable. And the other thing I wrote about, at least on Twitter, is the Seahawks run defense over the last 7 weeks of the season. They're the number one in the NFL. They're averaging under 3.1 yards allowed per game. And for them to hold the Eagles under 100 yards after giving up like 77 in the first half, that was a shock. I had high expectations or high hopes, but I thought that was an unrealistic thing to expect from that team. So to see them play that kind of run defense, that sets up everything else. And the offense to come out from the get-go, give coaching staff credit. Holy crap.
That was my point.
Every member of the coaching staff deserves a pat on the back, and we all harass them plenty. But the very first play I heard from players and coaches, both publicly and otherwise, that was intentional to have Russell Wilson keep that ball and get into his fourth quarter, like all-out mode from the get-go. And who knows if that was the key to the game, but it sure felt like he started off in a different mindset than we've seen him start off in almost any other game, recently.
I mean, that's why we've been harassing them, right? Like, this is in them. They can do this. They sometimes seem to choose not to. Like that Washington game, the Niners game. We'll see what they do against this Jacksonville team if they take it to them the same way they did the Eagles. But like all of the criticism of the coaching staff, I think kind of proved true a little bit in that Eagles game. Not that they're incompetent or incapable, but that they were not coaching, I don't think, the best they were not putting the best game plans out there. And against Philadelphia, it felt like they did, and the team showed up and performed the way I think we were all hoping they would have done, throughout the season.
And I think one of the big factors on that was there was a couple quarterback designed runs for Russell in that opening series where it kind of got Russ's blood flowing and some easy passes to Lockett, and it just felt like it got him in his groove early. I don't know if you guys felt the same way.
Yeah, I mean, that first read option play that, Brian was talking about, like, that was clearly designed for him to keep it because they gave him a lead blocker on that, right? They had the tight end come across. Mm-hmm. And so, like, that was very much like, you need to keep this ball, Russ. And so, and I don't know if that's what did it, if that's what made it click or what, but, like, you can see that in the plays that they called early.
And it was just such a drastic difference to that Niners game, which was the week before, which was so frustrating in the first half, where they were awful on offense. Like, I think Brian was tweeting out that CJ Beathard, I don't know say his name, completely outplayed Russell in the first half, and like the play calling and the whole staff would just look off. And I'm glad Brian mentioned the coaching because I thought just so many. Chris Richard, I think if he's going to get a head coaching job, I think that's the film a team would want to watch. The blitz he had with Justin Coleman off the edge, and the blitz he had on fourth down with KJ Wright. There was just so many well-designed plays, and yeah, the third down and long defense still needs some work. That's still going to drive us all a little nuts. But I thought from Bevel, from Tom Cable, Doug Ferrari, I tweeted this out after the game. I thought that was maybe the best top-to-bottom game Pete's coached, maybe in Seattle. And with an undermanned roster against a team that was so statistically good in almost every category, just completely own them from front to back, that really stood out to me. And the other big thing that stood out to me, I had cautious optimism about the offensive line heading into this game. They really blocked San Francisco well the week before. There were some communication errors that people got hold of on Twitter, but I really wanted to see how they would hold up against this Philly front. It's probably the best defensive line group in the league, maybe outside of Jacksonville. And man, Dwayne Brown has made a ton of difference. I know you guys were tweeting out some stats, and we all saw the PFF numbers, but I just on that first touchdown of Jimmy Graham, I tweeted during the game, having a guy like Brown has completely changed everything. He's been a massive difference maker, and just watching him smoothly move away the rusher on that touchdown pass to Graham and watching him pick up stunts and watching him just smoothly move away these guys, it's impacted the entire line, and they've gone from a completely dysfunctional unit that we couldn't go an hour in our show without talking about All of a sudden, they're a top 10 pass blocking team, and to hold up that well against Philly, that kind of blew my mind.
Yeah, on the coaching, I think we got to see in back-to-back home games the best Pete Carroll can be and what he can bring to a team, and the worst Pete Carroll can be. I mean, like, you compare this to Atlanta and the things that he did that I felt like directly contributed to a loss that didn't need to be a loss. And being out over his skis and overly aggressive and all that kind of stuff. And then you bring it back to a game like this, and he and John Schneider assembled such the perfect group of people when they're in this moment of doubt, and when there's, they're overlooked, and when there's a team that comes in that is overconfident, or, is maybe a little bit overconfident is probably a fair word for it. Like, the Seahawks cut through teams like that regularly. And a lot of that's Pete Carroll's coaching, his philosophy, how he brings teams together. And it was part of why I expected them to win this game against all statistical indicators. The key things for me was this offensive line coming together. Like you said, Jeff, I think it's looking promising. It's looking completely different than what it looked like. I like Mike Davis. I will gladly wear a Mike Davis t-shirt. I like the way he plays. I think he's a spark plug for the offense. I think he changes the offense. And I think this defense, which proved to be, I think this defense is better than I expected it to be, considering the changes. So, it's exciting. It has the potential to be a season-changing win. But as I kind of mentioned before, all it really does right now is erase one of the number of losses that they shouldn't have had. They need to get these next 2 games. They really can't lose the rest of the way. They got to run the damn table to really make this season, come close to reaching its potential.
Yeah, I mean, they can probably drop one, and if they are going to drop one, this is the one, that's Jacksonville game, that you want them to lose. But yeah, I mean, to have any hopes of any kind of home field, or the things that set you up for success for a deep run, winning out is obviously huge.
Yeah, if your goal is the division title, you're totally right, Nathan. Right, so. They can lose next week. Let's assume or hope that the Eagles beat the Rams, which I think is a realistic expectation. That is my expectation.
I don't know if we should be hoping for that, though. Like, if you're thinking about getting home seed and winning the division, and or getting home field and getting a good seed, the Eagles losing is helpful. This team, like you said, this team really needs to win out. They can probably drop the Jacksonville game, and they could probably be okay. But if the goal is to win out, then they guarantee themselves the division if they win out. And at that point, you're looking for the other division leaders to drop games, right? And so, if you're still shooting for that 1 seed, which is a little tight, but that 2 seed is pretty realistic still. And you need the Eagles to drop this game against the Rams.
Well, you're changing the goal line on me, dude. If they're going to win out, then yes, of course, Eagles losing would be better for sure. But if they lose one and they lose the Jacksonville game, then the Eagles winning means that the Seahawks just have to beat the Rams, in the rest of their games, and they'd win the division, right? So.
No, they can't win the division they can, but if they drop the Jacksonville game, the division's pretty much out of reach at that point. It's possible, but it's unlikely.
No. If they drop the Jacksonville game and the Rams lose to the Eagles, then all the Seahawks have to do is beat the Rams, and then they'll have the tiebreaker. So
what reminds me of is how important that win in LA was.
Oh my gosh.
That this week, and I was like, obviously the Eagles win is huge, but that win in LA is really going to come down, and it's going to have a massive effect on the end of the season, and who wins the division and playoff seeding and all that stuff. That win, it's a tidal wave for playoff effects. So Seahawks on the damn table.
You remember our show after that game where we spent a bunch of time talking about how many people were pissed off after that win? I mean, there's so many people that were complaining about that win, and I was just like beside myself. Forget the fact that it was a key win against a tough opponent on the road, like and a division opponent. That the Rams, I mean, they're freaking. We never beat the Rams, and they're so tough on this team. And like we finally beat them, and we're like, but our offense got 5 turnovers and only scored 16 points. I don't care. They won. Like, oh my god. Yeah, like you're right, Evan. That was a huge, the biggest game of the season for sure. So, Jeff.
Yeah.
What do you think was different on offense in that game? You know, this is they scored 10 points in the first quarter. First team all year to score a touchdown against the Eagles in the first quarter. They scored a touchdown in 3 of the 4 quarters. You know, second quarter is the only time they didn't score. When you watched that game, what stood out to you on offense that might have been a little bit different than what we've seen before?
I thought there were a variety of factors. I thought Russell, from start to finish, was definitely the cleanest and most consistent game that he's had. With Russell, there's been extreme highs and some really low lows early in games. And Russell coming out in that first quarter, just driving down the field, and that made a big difference. They're not playing from a hole. They're controlling the game. The fast start on offense, well, they only scored 3 points in the first drive, but just getting Russell going made a world of difference where it's not like you're going these quick 3 and outs, giving Philly the ball back, making the defense tired. That made a big difference. I thought they were really, really good on third down. There was a number of passes that they made early in the game. There was one to Lockett. There was one to Richardson and on a slant route. It was just Bevel, number 2. Bevel called a really good, clean game, and the offensive line was another one. But I think another big thing was Mike Davis, as you said. It wasn't just them running into a wall and wasting plays like they had been with Eddie Lacy and Thomas Rawls earlier. Between Mike Davis, the move he made out of the backfield to when he was a receiver, these guys are more dimensional weapons. McKissick is finding a good role. Davis has a much better role than Lacy. And with the 3 receivers and Jimmy Graham going, they seem to have found something on offense. But obviously, to me, the biggest thing was Russell. Russell was so good. Evan mentioned that clip with Brock Heward. And if you just watch the play, how he fakes the snap count, moves Malcolm Jenkins with his eyes, gets one-on-one Baldwin and the safety there, and throws the ball on a 12-yard in-cut with a perfect pass pro on an all-out blitz. Like, it was just master quarterbacking. And Russell, everyone's been talking about MVP this year mostly because of how bad his teammates have been and how he's carried them. This was the game that really caught everyone's attention, and that's why he's almost a consensus MVP candidate. Even Pete Prisco called him an MVP candidate.
Pigs fly.
So, yeah. So for me, it had to be Russell. That was, to me, the best game he's played maybe of his career.
Yeah, that was up there. It's so great seeing what Russell does and letting him showcase that in a primetime game against the Eagles. And I know we don't like talking about quarterback wins as a major factor for the MVP award, but the reality is from a national media perspective, it absolutely does. In that win against the Eagles, so the East Coast could see it in Sunday Night Football primetime, goes so far. So I think he has a really good shot, especially if they run the damn table and, they win the rest of their games, and he keeps a fairly clean slate in terms of interceptions and keeps like a 3-0, 2-1 ratio. I think he has a very good shot.
Someone in the chat, Colin Lundstrom in the chat's talking about another name we haven't mentioned, one of my favorites, which is J.D. McKissick. Guy got another touchdown. I mean, that's probably one of the plays that people are talking about the least. He made Michael Kendricks look like a fool, right? I mean, he fell down. I mean, that was like, if it was on the basketball court, the whole stadium would have been like, oh. I mean, that was an amazing route, and he's a running back, right? Like, and this guy's shown the ability to really impact the offense. He's taken the role that CJ Prosise was supposed to fill, and filled it, maybe better than Prosise would have if he was even there. And you add that to Mike Davis, who I can't remember who wrote about it on Twitter, but it was a good point. 4 20-yard plus plays in his 2 starts. I don't think there's any other player on the team that has, or any other running back that has more than like 1.
20 yards combined.
So, that's a big addition and a big find. I mean, you've talked about John Schneider and the personnel moves. I actually was going to write about this if I get time. Is go through all the personnel decisions they made in this offseason, from the draft to free agency to signings to trades. Like, how many of them have hit? I mean, his batting average was kind of ridiculous this offseason.
Yeah, I remember I spoke to Jason Fitzgerald in the offseason about Seattle's extensions, like in August, right before the season started. And I was like, what was your favorite Seattle offseason extension? And his number 1 was Bradley McDougald. And he literally it was almost like a prophecy. Jason was like, Seattle knows if Cam goes down that, they can't have like some terrible backup filling in his spot because he's a difference maker. But Jason Fitzgerald was like, Bradley McDougald was one of those guys where Seattle kind of waited back in the bushes during free agency and then got him for an absolute steal of a deal because he was not bad in Tampa Bay. Like, he was pretty good in Tampa Bay. And who knows why they didn't re-sign him, but I mean, how clutch was that signing? Just with Cam Chancellor going down and, his usage on the rise and the plays he's making, it's incredible.
It's kind of a mixed bag though, right? Like, on the one hand, McDougald's been a nice player, right? And he's obviously on a great contract. But on the other hand, you drafted 2 safeties. And on the one hand, Mike Davis has been a pleasant surprise, and he's holding it down pretty good. But on the other hand, he sat on the practice squad for like 10 weeks behind Rawls and Lacey.
Yeah.
And, Posick looks like he's going to be a good draft pick. And he only got like a chance to play after there were like 16 injuries on the offensive line. So it's like, on the one hand, they did some nice stuff. And on the other hand, it's like, maybe like there are these other things that are kind of going. I go around and around on this. Like, I mean, what ultimately matters is that they're good now and they've got them all in there and great. But like, it kind of threw away some weeks there. It feels like.
Well, remember, I mean, from the way personnel stuff goes, I mean, it's their job to provide the players. It's the coach's job to decide, depth chart and who fits where. And so, there's no doubt in my mind that the Posick thing was a Tom Cable decision about when to bring him in. And honestly, I can't argue that, his decision even. I mean, Posick, I thought he was, based on what I saw in training camp, which is his pass blocking is a lot farther ahead of his run blocking. He's not a good run blocker. He's getting pushed around quite a bit. He's going to have to add a bunch of strength. So I think Lacey was definitely the worst signing, no doubt about that, in terms of money spent. You
literally can't sign a backup for someone to take Cam's roster spot because of someone right? And they got Lacey sitting there making.
I think Delano Hill is still a good draft pick. I have 0 problems with the Delano Hill pick, and I think that that's going to be one that they come back and are happy to have made. You and I, Nathan, share a similar point of view on Tedrick Thompson. I'm not a believer there. But anyway, we could re-legislate the whole draft class. But Chris Carson maybe coming back. That was a surprise. I know the injury doctor guy on Twitter was like, it's like winning the lottery odds that he'll be back this year. He thought there was no chance.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. How do you guys feel about that? Are you hoping that he does come back? Or are you hoping that they're just like, you know what, just heal up and be ready next year?
The only issue I have is I don't want them to rush him, just like in a theory of being back ready for playoffs. I think what Mike Davis is doing right now and J.D. McKissick are doing right now is pretty serviceable. And running the offense through Russell, I mean, I'm all about it. I just don't want to rush him back so he potentially gets re-injured and then 2018, is in jeopardy. I just want to make sure they're not rushing him. And I'm sure they aren't, but it's an irrational fear of mine. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's no
the whole rookie class, and none of you mentioned Shaq Griffin.
Shaq's the best. He's great.
Was that not the best game he's played?
Yeah, probably.
He locked down
He's
Alshon
good.
Jeffrey, who'd been one of the better. He just got a $52 million extension this week.
Thank God we get Shaq
And-
Griffin for another 3 years for cheap. I cannot even tell you. That is like oh my God, that is like a salary cap orgasm. I literally can't even tell you. Like, he is so good. I'm so excited about him for the next 4 or 3 years for being so cheap. And not only Shaq Griffin, Justin Coleman is amazing.
That's another one.
That trade was good. John Schneider, he wears a title belt for a reason. That man is good.
Coleman, Marcus Smith, even Deion Jordan, although today sounded ominous about Deion Jordan, the way, I don't know if you heard Pete Carroll. It's like, yeah.
Is it legit?
You know another
He
one?
didn't say legit, but he was like, yeah, it's a different story on Deion Jordan. We're not ready to tell you about it yet. I'm like, oh, crap.
You know another one? Quinton Jefferson.
Yeah.
Quinton Jefferson, pretty good player. He got that cast taken off his hand. And when the Freeney move came out, I was like, why did they keep Quinton Jefferson? This guy hasn't done anything in 2 years. He's been cut. Why did they just keep him? All of a sudden, the last 2 games, he's been a really good rusher. And that was a guy, I know John was really excited about him. So to get him too, and he was all over the pass rush the last 2 weeks. I didn't see that coming. Did you guys see that coming?
I mean, I liked him. I was less optimistic about him after they cut him. Which is like another thing, like all this stuff, like Quinton Jefferson, great role player, good job, John Schneider. It's weird that you cut him at one point, but he's here now. That's what's important, I guess.
Well, I mean, I happen to like the guys that they've got in that interior line, and I liked Quinton Jefferson, but I never loved Quinton Jefferson, so I didn't lose any sleep over him moving off the roster. Actually, I'm kind of a Rodney Coe guy. I'm interested in what he can do. I think he's got a lot of heft to him and a little bit of a bad attitude, which I like. But yeah, I mean, he's definitely played well. I think Naz Jones we haven't mentioned, another guy that's been a huge addition. But yeah, I mean, Shaq Griffin. I mean, look, I was just arguing with this guy on Twitter who's still pissed at me for saying that the Seahawks, should have drafted a cornerback with their first pick. And do I still feel that way? And yeah, I still feel that way. I said it beforehand. I said it during. I'm saying it after. I'm still sticking with it. The Seahawks should have taken 2 cornerbacks out of their first 3 picks, and our entire roster setup would be different. You name almost any cornerback taken between our first pick and when Shaq Griffin was picked, any one of those almost added to our roster instead of Malik McDowell, with still getting Ethan Posick, and we'd be in a better position than we are right now. So sorry, I'm not going to change my tune on that. Nothing's convinced me otherwise. And damn Pete Carroll for raising our hopes about Malik McDowell and then being like, oh yeah, no, he's not coming back. Sorry, nothing to say there. Damn it, Pete, stop doing that. Just say he's out.
You know, Pete is.
I know. Well, I mean, have you guys, when we talked about the Eagles game? I'm sure we'll talk more about it, but this Jaguars team, like, how much of what you saw in the way the Seahawks played against the Eagles, how much do you think it translates to that game? What are the things you think are really different?
It's going to be interesting to see how they play against, talking about, how they game plan and whether they, and how they took it to the Eagles early. With Jacksonville being so good on defense and so shaky on offense, do they revert back to that? Well, let's just do some body blows with Mike Davis and let's just feel it out and let's just get to the fourth quarter and try to get one drive to win it, right? Or do they see what they could do against the Eagles and try to go out and take a lead and
what do you want
them
to
finish, but start and finish?
I'd
like to see them. I want to see them play a full game. This, especially where they are now with injuries and everything. I think, and it's always felt dangerous, and they've always had a knack for kind of pulling these out. But now that you're down some players, I don't think it's smart to try to just get to that last drive and then see what you can do against a really good defense. And so, to me, like, you just blew one of the better teams, or you just dominated one of the better teams in the NFL. Why would you change that game plan? Why would you try to do anything else? Like, go do that same thing against this Jacksonville team.
Dude, I am so the opposite. I'm full armadillo mode. Like, roll up in a ball, do not give them anything, let Blake Bortles give you the game, and get out of there with like a 9-6 win, and I'd be totally fine with that.
You know what I don't like about that is I get a conservative vibe. I want them to keep the foot on the accelerator. I want a full game from the offense again. I do not want any I'm scared of the Jags defense bullshit. We have freaking Russell Wilson. God damn it, guys. Like, we got one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. We have an MVP candidate. Run the damn offense through him, open up the lanes, give him the ball, put the ball in Russell Wilson's hands, let him make plays. Sorry, Brian, I'm not going off on you specifically.
You go off on me because I'm coming back at you, so don't pull up now, man.
Just this conservative nature of like, oh, we're worried about the Jags defense. Guess who else has a really good defensive line? The Eagles. And what did we just do to them?
Yeah, it'd be great if Pete acted like he had as good, like if he had as much swagger about Russell Wilson as he had about his own defense. Like, have that confidence that you have in your defense, that you can play a full game and that you can keep it close all game long. Have that in your MVP candidate. Russell Wilson's really good. Let him be really, really good for a full game.
Yeah, I don't know, dudes.
Also, if you want Blake Bortles to give you the game, the best way to do it is to get a lead and make him throw the ball. Otherwise, they're just going to pound it with
stop
Fournette.
The run.
Yeah, they're going to have to do it no matter what.
That's the way you get Blake Bortles to give you the game. And, guys, was Peyton Manning an MVP of the highest scoring offense in the history of football? I think he was. How did he fare against the Seahawks defense?
Yeah,
How'd that go for him?
Well, it's a little different. I mean, you still have your really good defense.
He's one of the best quarterbacks in the history of football. Like, he owns like every record. Like, how did Aaron Rodgers do against our defense? Not so well. How did Drew Brees do against our defense? I mean, this is not a slam on Russell Wilson. It's an acknowledgement of that Jaguars defense is next level. This is not like, oh, they're the best defense this year, like the Patriots were the #1 ranked defense last year. Bull. This Jaguars defense is insane. I mean, the quality of player that they have that can dominate a game at every level. And I was just looking on Twitter, Telvin Smith, their linebackers, back to practicing. So there's another blue chip player. As I said today, he's got more touchdowns than Tyler Lockett. Like, they're I think every member of their secondary has more interceptions than anybody on the Seahawks. Like, this is a really, really, really good defense. Doesn't mean I think that the Seahawks have no chance of scoring, but this idea that Russell Wilson can just go balls out and everything's gonna be okay.
Well, I mean, I don't think that they should treat this game like the Houston game, right? But if this defense is so good, you need to, like, why try to get something done in the fourth quarter? Why let it come down to the last minutes of the game? Like, if it's so good, you need to take your shots where you can. And you can't let any opportunity pass you by, right? And so you don't want to play stupid and you don't want to change who you are. But, take that same game plan that you had against the Eagles and, try to, like I said, just try to take advantage of every opportunity that you can get, because you're not going to get a lot of them. And there's no guarantee that you're going to get to the fourth quarter and you're going to get that opportunity to finish the game.
Go ahead, Devin.
How'd you know I was going to say something?
I saw you unmute. Go ahead.
I just need to remind you, Brian Nemhauser, who's our quarterback? Who's our franchise quarterback? Who's a potential MVP candidate? Who's so damn good that he's a generational talent? Would you like to
Russell Wilson? It's Russell Wilson.
Yeah, it's Russell goddamn Wilson. That's who it is. You got to run it through him. There is no fear when we have Russell Wilson. We're not putting Blake Bortles at quarterback. This is Russell Wilson, Brian.
Gosh, I'm glad. I wish I could play chess against you, man. I'm not even very good at chess. I have a feeling it would go well for me. But Jeff, look, the guys are right about one thing, just one thing, and that is that the way to beat the Jaguars so far this year has been to score more than 17 points. 4 teams have done it. 4 teams have beat them. And the way that they've beat them is average 172, or I think it's 177 yards rushing in those 4 games. What's your take on whether the Seahawks can score north of 17 in this game, and how legitimate of a running game? The Cardinals got like 109 or something like that, and that was enough. What's your take there?
Well, first of all, if there's any hope for the Seattle standpoint, Blaine Gabbert did pretty well against this defense. And that was just a couple weeks ago. Blaine Gabbert and Russell Wilson couldn't be further apart in terms of quarterback quality. Maybe there was the revenge factor. I don't know. But if there's hope that anyone could succeed against them, the fact that Blaine Gabbert did it gives all of us hope that Russell can probably do it. To me, the big difference between Philly and Jacksonville is the cornerback play. Philly's cornerbacks going into the year were a big red flag across the league. They'd really held up nicely this year, but Seattle kind of exposed them a bunch of times, which led to penalties down the field. There was a lot of technique issues. There was a face mask that wasn't called. You got Jalen Ramsey and AJ Bouye, probably 2 of the top 5 corners in the league this year. I think there's a pretty good case Ramsey could be Defensive Player of the Year. So to me, that's the big question. But I'm pretty confident. I think they can pull out at least 17 points just based on how good Russell is. I think 17 isn't that crazy. To me, the big question in this game is how do you block Calais Campbell? Because Seattle couldn't do it when he was in Arizona. The guard plays a little bit better this year with Posick and Joko. But Campbell shifted out to end in that defense now, and he's got a career high in sacks. He's just an unblockable force, and there's guys all across the line. So he's been a Russell Wilson killer throughout his career. So to me, that's the biggest question of the game. How do you block this guy? Is he going to line up against Jermaine Ifedi? What are they going to do against that guy? Because he opens up things for everyone else. They got 4 really good rushers. They added Marcel Darius. So my confidence level isn't great per se for Seattle, but right now Russell, I'm kind of with Evan. I want to go all out with Russell because I think that's the only way they can win. I think if they try to play that conservative style, I don't think they'll beat this team. I think Jacksonville's kind of set up to play like that. And yeah, if we're gonna beat Blake Bortles, the best way to beat him is he needs to be in passing situations, because if they could just run the ball every time, they'd be happy to punt the ball away and go 3 and out. And so I'd say I have a medium confidence level, but if they're going to win, I think it's got to be the way Evan and Nathan are saying it.
God, you guys have such a short memory. Didn't we just talking about the Rams game and how that was the win of the season?
I'll take that.
What was the score of that game?
Hold up, Brian. What month of the year was that game played in? In December, every single year, the Seahawks, like clockwork, their offense suddenly starts working out of nowhere, and Russell Wilson goes on an MVP campaign every single December. This is December Russell Wilson. This is not September or October or whatever the month it was that we played them.
Also, there was a lot of strange things that happened in that game. Greg Zuerlein, who never misses a field goal, missed an easy kick in that game. Todd Gurley fumbles at the 1-yard line. Sheldon Richardson catches that pick interception. There was a lot of Cooper Kupp doesn't touch the ball right in his hands. I'm not knocking Seattle, but that game took a lot of weird things to happen.
I think that's what's going to have to happen in this game. I think that the Jaguars' offense is nowhere near the Rams' offense. So, but the Seahawks caused 5 turnovers in that game, and they needed every friggin' one of them. And I think that if there's one thing that will turn this game for Jacksonville faster than anything else, faster than not scoring, faster than being conservative, it will be a turnover. And I love the way Russell played in this last game. He almost had another early pick. It was really close, and the game would have been different. And he had, in the 2 games prior, 2 of the worst picks we've ever seen, and pretty damn close to December when those throws were made, Evan. So, I am leading the charge for Russell Wilson MVP. I believe in him, and I believe that he can lead the team in a lot of ways. I just think for this game, guys, they've got to figure out a way to take advantage of the weakness of the Ravens The Ravens. Sorry, that's the other defense that's on my mind. But of the Jaguars, which is they're 28th in the NFL in rush defense. Yards per carry, rush yards, they're just not good at defending the run, even with Darius there. So, I don't know if there's a way that they can get themselves to 100 yards the way that they got themselves to 100 yards against the Eagles. But if they can do that, I think that's way more important than Russell Wilson slinging the ball around the field. AJ Boye, Jalen Ramsey, guys, go look at the numbers. Nobody is succeeding in throwing at either one of those cornerbacks. Nobody.
I ain't scared of him. We got Russell Wilson. We're going to put up 27 plus, Brian. I'm telling you right now.
Okay, from your mouth to the field, I hope that's true.
That Jaguar defense has gotten a lot better against the run with Darius, and you don't just get rushing yards from calling run plays. Part of unleashing Russell is letting him have the option to scramble and make something happen with his legs and go downfield, right? I mean, run downfield, not just throw downfield. So you can dream about, and you're freaking me out because I bet Pete is thinking the same thing. We're gonna have to run the ball. This team, they don't do that. They're not good at that. Don't do the thing you're bad at, especially against a defense that has gotten a little better against defending the run. I'm not advocating being foolish about this and trying to play that same game like they played against the Texans. But if they're going to go in there thinking that they're going to get Mike Davis going, that's terrifying. They're not going to win that way, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think you get Mike Davis going. He had 64 yards on the ground against the Eagles and 100 yards of total offense. I think that you have a way better chance to win this game if Mike Davis has 100 yards than if Russell Wilson has 300. I absolutely believe that. And again, I got to turn back the numbers. If you go back and look at the Seahawks record at games when Russell's thrown for a lot versus when they've had a running back get some yards, it's pretty clear which is more advantageous for the Seahawks. But anyway, I hope you guys are right. I hope that they are able to do what no one else has done against this team. I hope that my eyes are telling me things that are incorrect. But my strong instinct is that they've got to force this game, funnel everything to Blake Bortles. Make it rely on Blake Bortles. And if they can hold Leonard Fournette to under 50 yards rushing, which the Cardinals held him to 29 or something like that. That offensive line is horrible. Fournette's been nursing an ankle injury. If they can hold him down and force it to Bortles, and that defense can actually create some turnovers, and please God, Blair Walsh can make his kicks, then I feel like you can get out of there looking pretty clean. And look at the Rams. The Rams went in there 127-17 or something like that. The offense was not the reason they won that game. Special teams, Tyler Lockett's another one that could be a factor in this game. Their special teams, their coverage teams are crap. I think they're 24th or worst in punt and kick coverage.
I think for Seattle to win this game, their defensive line has got to be a big part of it. Because I don't know if we haven't mentioned Frank Clark or Sheldon Richardson yet in the show. Clark might have been.
Yeah, go on, Jeff.
Clark might have been the best player in the whole game last week. I know we've all talked about Clark dominated. He was playing at a different speed and a different ferociousness. You saw him talking to Wentz, and Sheldon Richardson might not have been the player that we thought he was in terms of an interior rusher. But from watching the games on rewatch, both of the last 2 weeks, Richardson is really good. And I tweeted at Evan last week. I remember tweeting at him just did you watch Richardson closely? I kept watching the Niners game. He was just blowing up people on the line. And when you got Clark going like that and you have Richardson, those two guys, along with Bobby Wagner, that's maybe the new face of this defense. And we were the Legion of Boom in the corners for all these years. But, man, when Clark and Richardson are going, they had pressure, 65% of the time or something? The numbers on the pressure were ridiculous. And if you're going to beat this team, that's probably the more sustainable way rather than trying to figure out what we're going to do on offense.
Well, I was going to say, can we at least agree that our bigger advantage is our defense against their offense?
Oh God, yeah.
Any arguments there? What do you guys? I mean, there's been a lot of talk about Sheldon Richardson, and I think there's some people that are feeling like they have to take the mantle for Sheldon Richardson to bring attention to how effective he's been. Where are you guys on Sheldon Richardson and like not only how he's playing, but do you want to see the team go all in on signing him and the money it will take to bring him back and what that could mean to whether they bring back a Jimmy Graham or whether they bring back, like, where are you guys at on Sheldon Richardson for this team now and in the future?
It's a great question. For me, it's all like you said, Brian, it's all relative to how much he wants. I asked Jason Fitzgerald, over the cap guy, a few weeks ago what he thought he would get. And Jason was like 1 year, 9 to 10 million. And I thought that was just way too low for Sheldon.
Sounds crazy.
Maybe Jason, I mean, I know Jason has contacts all around the league and hears much more rumors than I do and has a ton of more credibility than I do, but that seems really, really low to me. I cannot see 9 to 10 million on a 1 year deal for Sheldon, especially the impact he's had the past couple games. The minimum I could see him getting is like 13 minimum. I don't see 10 million a year for Sheldon. Like such a strong positional value, such few players in the league, with his talents, with his abilities, with his, he doesn't always show up on the stat sheet, but man, he has an impact sometimes. So
if nothing else, there's no reason that he wouldn't get years, right? Like even if it works out to 9 million a year, 1 year, why I don't understand why that would be in what Ian's getting.
Well, Jeff, jump in. I have some thoughts on this, but I want to make sure you get a chance to jump in.
Well, obviously it all depends on the price point, but I think I'm all in on Richardson. I think this is he's going to become kind of the new core player on defense. Now you're going to lose Cliff Averill, Michael Bennett's getting up there in age. I think Clark and Richardson, those become your core players on defense, along with Wagner and Earl Thomas. I think those are the four guys you build your defense around. And yeah, Richardson's a different player than I thought he was in terms of like an interior pass rusher. I thought he'd be more of a sack guy, but he just blows up the line of scrimmage consistently. And I think his attitude around the locker room has been really good. He's gone along really well. If you hear any of his radio interviews, he's a really interesting guy. But that aside, I think I'm all in to bring this guy back. I know the cost might be crazy and he might cost you another player, but I think you kind of need these building blocks on your defense as you get rid of an Averill, as you get rid of a Chancellor. Who knows if Sherman's going to be back?
So the one thing I want to remind you guys of this is if you're going to put money into Sheldon, I assume you're wanting to extend Frank too. So Frank's going to get huge money. So I'm not discouraging that, but I'm just saying a lot of money's going to go into the defensive line then.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as concerned about that part of it. I think that's a good call out. But I mean, look, yes, I think Sheldon is played better than his numbers indicate, but his numbers are his numbers. How many sacks does he have this year? One sack. Guys that have one sack, that have 33 tackles and play interior defensive line, they don't get 18 million, 16 million, 15 million, like we were talking earlier. By the way, Jason was the guy that was putting out that number before of like 18 million for Sheldon. I think that's the number we all thought, based on what Jeff, you were saying, we thought we were getting with Sheldon Richardson, which is a soul-wrecking defensive three technique that just goes in and crushes teams' dreams. And I don't think we've seen that level of havoc getting caused. I think he's been a very good player. I don't know that we've seen him really turn into a just totally dominant, takes over the game and teams are unable to deal with him kind of player yet. There hasn't been an Aaron Donald game or I'm not even talking about a season, a game where he was like Geno Atkins or Calais Campbell, or there's a bunch of guys that have been three techniques over the years that can really disrupt. And I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm down on him. I'm not. I don't know that I see him as this, linchpin player. I also heard him on, Danny David Moore, something he said about Seattle. Like, he made some comment about, he's used to being in New York where he had stuff that he could do. And it just made me think, like, what's to make any of us think that he wants to come back? Like, he got traded here. And so I don't know. I'm not as certain about Sheldon. I think I'm certainly happy we have him. But I think the more interesting question recently has been, like, what happens with Jimmy Graham? Like, every indication I had from a lot of different places was that he didn't want to be here. He's ready to go. And last for his deal, it looked like the team was ready to let him go. The guy's got 9 touchdowns in 8 games.
Who could have seen that coming?
I got to tell you, Nathan, it's not. People inside that locker room and in that front office didn't necessarily see it coming. I think there's people that it's not for lack of trying, but there was a clear disconnect between how Russell was, how he was playing and how he was utilizing Jimmy Graham. And that seems to finally, like, that one touchdown against against Rams, right? That was when it started, right?
Yeah.
They finally figured it out and they've caught fire. So, what do you think? Are you guys expecting to franchise him next year? Do you think that they find a way to bring him back? I mean, you could let him walk and get a nice comp pick too. Probably now he's shown that he's maybe worth a larger contract than people were estimating.
Yeah, I mean,
sorry, go ahead, Nathan.
Go for it. You can.
No, go ahead.
I mean, tight ends are pretty affordable generally, right? I mean, he's a little older now. He hasn't been, lighting the world on fire. I mean, he's been very good. But just in this offense, he's not producing like he used to, or maybe as much as some other folks are. And, tight ends, you can get a tight end for what, 10 million, 9 million? I mean, that's about what he's making now, right? And so that's not crazy for someone who, you should be able to expect to get you, 8 to 10 tight end or touchdowns maybe for a couple more years. I don't think tight ends necessarily age real great, but right now he looks like he's not slowing down too much. So I don't think that he's a priority must sign, but I don't think there's any reason to kind of chase him out the door. But then with, like, Sheldon, I think I agree with you a lot on Sheldon, Brian. I like him. He's good. I wouldn't say he's a star or, one of the best interior defensive linemen. I wouldn't pay him $18 million. But he's another guy that's like, there's no reason to chase him out the door. He's still young. I would be willing to spend some money on him. And, his tackle for loss numbers last I saw weren't great yet either. But it's not just about sacks with those guys, right? I mean, Marcel Darius is making $16 million a year. He's kind of an overpay, but he got that contract. Malik Jackson's making $14 million a year. He's not a huge sack guy. Ball Joseph is making 12.5. So it's not unrealistic to think that Sheldon could command, maybe 13, 14 million still.
Evan, I know you got to run in a little bit, so why don't you weigh in here?
Yeah, just on the Jimmy Graham thing, just a little context to this. The market has not reset since he got his deal from the Saints, at 9-10 mil a year. So his current deal is still the top of the market. It has not changed. And I think with him being older and, just a couple recent injuries and stuff, so some concerns over that, I think you could get him at like 7 to 8 million a year. I might be totally wrong, but I think you could. I think you could throw out a 2-year, 3-year, $24 million total deal, something like that, $8 million per year. And I think you could probably get him. And Evan Hill, the most notorious Jimmy Graham hater on Twitter and all social medias, would like to profusely apologize. And this is my repentance period right now for anybody watching. I have been extremely skeptical of Jimmy Graham over the years, but for some reason, him and Russell have caught fire. His red zone usage has obviously spiked. He's getting the targets. Jermaine Kearse is gone. Hallelujah. Sorry, Nathan. And it's great. It's all jolly. It's awesome. So I'm super excited to see this red zone usage with him. And this is what we wanted from Jimmy Graham. We wanted him to be a red zone monster, and this is it. This is what we're seeing. This is great. So
I don't know if you need to apologize, because Jimmy was terrible in the first couple games of the year. That game in Green Bay, he was dropping passes. He looked sour. Then maybe you can blame the coaching staff. They were asking him to be the Zach Miller role where he's blocking. They're letting Jimmy be Jimmy, and he's been great. I don't think it's fair to be unfair. If he was this the whole time, then you would have never had that take, right?
Yeah.
Some of that's on Russell, some of that's on the coaching staff, and some of that's on him trying to adjust to a system that didn't maybe fit his skill set at first. So,
yeah,
I don't think you need to apologize. I think you're happy with how he's playing, and I think it's realistic. But the cool thing that's happened with Jimmy and kind of the tight end group in general, they've kind of become the voice of the offense. And whether it's that stupid dancing in the end zone with the techno Thursday or whatever that is, and Luke Wilson dancing around the locker room, the tight end group is kind of brought together the offense. And Nick Vanette's come out of his shell a little bit. He's gone a lot better on the field.
He had a nice game on Sunday.
He's become a nice player. He's a really good blocker. He's got good hands. He's good in space. And with Jimmy now, if you watch those, like, not the sound effect, the all access video, when Jimmy scores a touchdown, just his whole energy just completely changes. He's screaming like a madman. He's shaking Russell. He's going crazy. It just gives a different energy to the team. Like, that guy kind of used to be Marshawn, and they don't have that running back anymore. Doug Baldwin's a lot quieter than he used to be. He's not that play. He's just more mature. He's more of a professional now than he was. He's probably the voice of the team, maybe inside the locker room. But the tight end group, Jimmy especially, they'll kind of come out of their shell, and it's really brought the team together. It's been kind of cool to watch him, because it seemed like there was no chance he was coming back.
Real quick note on this, on bringing the offense together. I love seeing emotion from Russell Wilson on the field with his fist bumping after the touchdown to Jimmy Graham and all this human nature from Russell Wilson. Awesome.
The humanity.
I love it. I love, you know what? I love it when Russell Wilson swears. I think it motivates the offense. And I'm not joking.
It motivates, it moves nations. I mean, when Russell Wilson swears, I am 100% behind you. Evan, how much more time you got? Because I want to get your read on a couple of things.
10 more minutes is good.
All right, cool. We can keep going then. But, one of the other things, I fully agree with what you're saying, Jeff, both on the Jimmy Graham front, which, you had such a mature take. So thank you for being the adult in the room and bringing us out of our,
That's scary. If I'm the adult in the room.
And I agree with your point about the tight ends. I think they've given the team a lightheartedness that honestly they've needed. There's been so much weight on their shoulders for so long, and remember, this is fun. Go out there and have fun. That. I think that's, and I think Russell Wilson is better suited to being influenced by that than having people around him that are so intense all the time and curmudgeonly that it's maybe not his best place to be. But this whole Jimmy Sheldon thing got me. There's another thing that we had talked about a couple places. There's two. One is Luke Jokel, and what do you do with him? We've talked about him before. And another is Lockett versus Paul Richardson. I've kind of made my points clear on where I think things are with Lockett versus Richardson, and I'll save myself for last. But where are you guys at on Jokel and on Lockett or Richardson, if you could only have one?
I mean, I'm taking Preach.
Why?
I don't think it's he's the best player of the three. I mean, people are talking about $10 million a year. That seems kind of steep, I guess. But he's fantastic. I don't know. I mean, he's a stick, but he goes up and he gets balls. He runs well with the ball after he catches it. He catches the ball well. I think that you could really easily see Gold Tate or Jermaine Kearse The guy's had 21 catches for 261 yards and a touchdown his last 2 games. Evan, if you're going to apologize to anyone, maybe apologize to Jermaine Kearse. I see him leave and explode the same way that you've seen those guys explode. Lockett can't seem to get involved in this offense right now, and frankly doesn't look like the same athlete that he was before the injury. I think he still looks like a nice player, but he doesn't look like a guy that you maybe want to spend money on. And with Joe Cool, I just, if you're going to have to spend, $8 million a year for a few years, assuming he gets basically the same deal, just some more years, I don't know that. I mean, it's kind of hard because they finally have the offensive line looking good and playing well, and so to disrupt that is kind of tough. But I also don't think it's a whole lot to ask to replace one guard. The rest of that line is locked in. So you could address that through the draft or look to do Jokel Part 2. Or, I mean, you have all kinds of moving parts with Fant and some other stuff coming back, right? So who knows what all they'll do there. So I'm all in on Preach. I mean, he's made huge plays, right? And he makes explosive plays. And, that play that he made against the Texans, I think on the very last drive, it was either the very last drive or the one that ended with the pick, where Russ he just put it up, and he had no business putting that ball up. He just had to. And Preach went and got it over a safety who should have had an interception. And, there's not a lot of guys that can do that, and he's done it consistently all year long. And there's injury concerns, but that dude has earned whatever money he makes.
Jeff?
I saw your takes, Brian, and I was fascinated by that conversation for sure. Because Lockett as a rookie, to me, was like a home run player. He was a dynamo on special teams. He was burning down the field. And what Nathan's saying about his speed and his explosion, that's for sure. But he's also coming off a pretty serious injury. He had it in December last year, so it hasn't been a ton of turnaround time. So I'm really stumped on this one, if I'm going to be honest. If I had to sign one right now, it's Richardson, just because I know what he is, and you can see him ascending, and he's been healthy for a long time, knock on wood. But I need to know what the evaluation of Lockett's health is. I'm not privy to that information. For me, it all depends on the price. If you're paying $10 million a year to keep Richardson, I think you have to walk from that deal and maybe move that money around to someone else. If you can get Lockett for like $6 million and Richardson for 10, I think you take Lockett at $6 million. To me, it all depends on the price, because I think you're not going to be able to keep both. And to me, they're both really good with really good skill sets that fit this offense, that are both downfield threats. So to me, it all comes down to price. Whoever I can get at a more affordable price, that's probably who I'm taking, because you need the money for so many other pieces of the roster, whether it's the offensive line. They might have to extend Dwayne Brown a bit. We mentioned Graham. We mentioned Sheldon Richardson, or there's just so many other areas. So if the wide receiver almost becomes kind of a luxury position, unfortunately. So to me, it's just who's the more affordable player. That's who I take.
So let me propose something. What if it's not one or the other? What if you let them both walk?
Let them both walk?
Yeah. I've been thinking about this recently because
just roll with Amara Darbo or what?
Yeah, well, I mean, this assumes you extend Jimmy Graham. So you've got Jimmy Graham, Doug Baldwin, your two top pass catchers, and then you maybe hope. Yeah. God. All right, Brian, I need to go. No, just kidding. No, I've been thinking about this recently. I mean, so I have a Tyler Lockett jersey in my closet signed. I love Tyler Lockett as a rookie. I thought he was phenomenal. But I think Paul Richardson is going to command some serious money in free agency, and I'm not sure if I'm comfortable giving it to him with his injury concerns, kind of like what Jeff was talking about. He has a real rattled injury history, and I don't know. I mean, it depends on the guarantees, but I don't know if I'm comfortable giving him serious cash. I don't know how long he'll be available consistently in a season. And, we got to see what happens with Lockett to see if he bounces back. But I'm honestly not opposed to letting both of them walk and investing money in other players on the team. Seriously.
That's not the craziest take. that's and I mean that in the least patronizing way possible. I think that's a possibility. I tend to think the team's locked in with Tyler, but I might be wrong. And the reason I think that is mainly, okay, I play this out. Richardson clearly had, I mean, this year there's no doubt who's the better player this year. Zero doubt. Richardson's a better player. And specifically, what do you get paid for it at receiver or on offense in general if you're a touchdown maker? Touchdowns are what gets you money more than anything else. And Richardson's got 5. He's, I think, second on the team in touchdowns. Lockett's got 1. He just got his first in this last game. There's no doubt that Lockett's shown less explosion this year, but I haven't gone back all the way through his college career, but I don't know if Richardson has played 2 full years in a row at any point in the last, 8 seasons or something like that. And, knowing how much money the Seahawks have to spend elsewhere, the idea of spending $10 million on a player with that kind of injury history, if it's a 1-year deal, maybe, although I don't know why he would do that. It's just hard for me to kind of see it. And I also feel like you let him go and reshuffle, in the draft, bring in another young player, draft at the position. I'd be fine doing that. I guess I don't see Richardson. Some people are talking about him like similar to Nathan. He's not alone, as like this guy can be a legit number 1, like one of the best receiver. Someone was talking about being a top 10 receiver in the NFL. I'm like, what? I don't see it, guys. I mean, I think he's I think he can be if he stays healthy, I think he can be a top third of the league, number 2. That's what I think he can be. I don't see him having any number 1 potential whatsoever.
Well, Brian, I recommend not listening to the cursed truthers. There's a couple of them. One of them is on the podcast. You got to phase away from that crowd.
I don't know if I've differentiated those guys. So I don't know. I think Lockett, for the reasons Jeff you mentioned, it's almost confounding to me why everyone's off his bandwagon so quickly. Guy had a massive injury last year. He came back, didn't miss a friggin' game after that season. He came back here, and then he's slowly started getting better. And see you later, Evan. So it's confusing to me that people are so quick to move off of Tyler Lockett. I think that, as I wrote before, like one of the things I really value in a receiver that's not easy to find is separation. Guys that actually create separation so that when a quarterback throws to them, there's some space to throw it. And Lockett, his average separation per catch is larger than Richardson's, and I think it always will be. Richardson is a contested catch player. I think that's a good fit for Russell and how Russell likes to throw the deep ball, and I think it is valuable. But Lockett's a guy, to me, much more similar to a Doug Baldwin, who is going to consistently get open against any player you put him up against over time. And so I guess I'm expecting him to bounce back more next year and even the rest of this year. And I just think durability wise, even though he got that injury, that was not like a tendon or something like that. It was a broken bone. I mean, it was, to me, it does not pretend that he's going to have like an injury problem going forward. So that's where I am with him. Jokel, I'm with you, Nathan. Davis is a huge fan. Davis Sue is a huge fan. Talked about re-signing him since the beginning, or I still. You saw him got knocked on his ass by Brandon Graham, right? Like turned around with one push. He played pretty well, but to have him be locked in, I don't see any reason to believe he's going to get any more physical. He's been in the league long enough. I'd rather see them go back to the lottery, see what they can pull out of the draft, or maybe another veteran free agent. Not a huge believer in sinking another $8 million or more into Luke Jokel. Yeah,
I mean, he's another guy. Like, I'm not gonna chase them away. But there's no reason. There's really no reason to decide to dump a lot of money on him. If you can work it out and he's reasonable and you keep your line together, that's great. But contrary to some comments out there, he's far from the best left guard in the game.
Where did you hear that, Nathan?
I don't know. Some wacko. So yeah, like, I mean, Seattle has this problem, and they've had it. This isn't a new problem for Seattle, and they've consistently decided not to pay their middle class, which is why I disagree with the idea about paying whichever one is more affordable between Lockett and Richardson. You either pay one of them because they're really good and they're worth getting that multi-year deal, or I think you do that, and I would expect that to be Richardson. But whoever it is, you pay the guy that you think is worth paying. And if you don't think either one of them is worth paying, you just let them both go. So I'd rather do one or none, and not try to cut the baby in half.
Yeah. I think Jokel's situation completely changed once they got Dwayne Brown here. Before they had Dwayne Brown, and there was just a revolving door at left tackle with Odiombo, and who knows what Fant is going to be. Jokel really stood out as like kind of a guy they kind of need to keep around for continuity's sake, for like a veteran experience. Now with Dwayne Brown, he's become the priority. He takes up a lot more money. They added 10, 11 million to their books with that deal. I don't think you're going to have him and pay Jokel, and with Britt's raise, pay all these guys. I think you got to make decisions, and I think Jokel, he's a fine player. There's nothing wrong with him, but I don't think he's a standout player. I think if you're going to have to let any of these guys walk we're talking about, I think he's the guy. Unfortunately, I know that'll hurt the continuity and maybe some of the progress they've made, but I think with Posick and with Fetty at right tackle, who's actually had a pretty okay year considering it's his first year at right tackle, I think you're going to come back if you have 4 guys solidified. I think that's pretty good. And I think, yeah, you're going to have to make this. This is a really tough offseason for John Schneider. And I think if you got to cut bait on one of these guys, I think it has to be Jokel.
Yeah, I mean, don't forget you got guys like Jordan Roos, who's getting developed this year and is a very different body type than Jokel. Super strong, could actually help in the run game. They've been using him. I think they used him at fullback in the last game. And, I don't know that I believe Reese Odiombo is ever going to be a starter, after what we've seen this year, just in terms of his physical ability. But he's another guy you've got there. Nathan, you mentioned George Fant. We don't know what's going to happen there. It's really hard for me to imagine Fant at guard. He just doesn't seem to profile to be a guard, but crazier things have happened.
But he could be a right tackle.
He could, and that would be a tough pill because, Cable was talking about that today. He was actually asked this question, and he's like, basically pushed it aside. But one of the things he did say is, yeah, Fetty's our right tackle. He's playing well, and I can't really argue. I don't think Fetty's like great, but he's cut down his penalties. He's not given up a lot of sacks or hits. I mean, I thought he was going to be a total disaster. For his first year at right tackle, I'd say he played better than Britt did in his first year at right tackle. Not as a run blocker. I think Britt was a better run blocker, but maybe I think he was definitely better than James Carpenter was in his first year at right tackle. Giacomini had been in the league a little bit, so I don't know. He was probably better, but it's a question. So, yeah, that's going to be an interesting one to see how the team handles it next year. The good news is, it looks like we got a legit four starters on the offensive line that have some longevity to them. And it's a lot easier to fill one spot than it is to fill 5. That's what it feels like we've been doing for the last few years.
Yeah, it's a different problem, and it's a much better problem than they've had for a while.
Exactly. So I'm curious. I don't know if you guys have a few more minutes, but I think I started maybe I didn't even put this in my article. I started writing it, but I took it out. So before the game on Sunday, I was at a bar, at a restaurant with my son and a friend of mine, and I asked them both, all right, how would you feel about the Seahawks if they beat both the Eagles and the Jaguars the next 2 weeks? And my son said, Super Bowl. I immediately think they're a Super Bowl team. My friend said, I don't think I really feel that differently about them. And then they started arguing back and forth. And my son said, well, I just think there's 0% chance of that happening. They're not going to win those games. And
halfway there.
We're halfway there, and he's super excited. But easier question for you guys: what will you think of this team if they manage to have beaten the Eagles and they go in there and they beat the Jaguars? What will that mean to you, Jeff? Why don't you start?
I think I agree with your son. I think the whole conversation me and Will had after that Atlantic game was kind of resetting our expectations for the season. Sherman was done. Chancellor was done. The defense looked like a shell of themselves. The coaching staff was a disaster. Okay, let's just watch. Let's see what happens. The Eagles game happens. All of a sudden, you see that Seahawks of old team, the way they used to win, that dominant four-quarter team. We probably haven't seen that since the Super Bowl or the end of the 2014 season. They go out and beat two teams that I think are kind of the class of the league in terms of defense right now, and Russell Wilson's playing at this MVP level. To me, it changes my expectation to Super Bowl level. I don't see how you can watch a team that has been so up and down all year going, and they have a performance like they did last week. I don't see how you can't think this team can beat anyone. That to me, that resets my expectation again back to what it was once they made the Dwayne Brown trade. This team could win the NFC, and that would be my view if this happened. I might be extreme on that view, but that's how I would do it.
Where are you at, Nathan?
I totally agree. Trying to pull their DVOA right now. Think about where this team is. If they win this game against Jacksonville, they'll be 9-4. They'll have come off back-to-back wins against a team that was 9-2 going into the game against the Seahawks, and a team that was 8-4 going into the Seahawks, right? A game against the Seahawks. So two division leaders. Huh?
10-1.
Yeah, so you're right. 10-1. 10-1. Two division leaders, two of the better teams. Jacksonville, they're playing lights out on defense. And I don't know where that would probably put them in DVOA, but that's a really, really good football team. And the NFC is crazy right now. And the Seahawks, gave a couple games away, but a 9-4 team that has just come up beating two of the better teams in the league, you got to think that they're right there for 11-5 or 12-4. They're ninth right now in overall DVOA. Like, this is a really, really good football team, and there's going to be some weird stuff to work out in the playoffs with seeding and how that'll all look. But there's no reason to think that if this team can beat Philadelphia and then Jacksonville on the road, that this isn't a Super Bowl team.
Yeah, it's it's really rare that I'm the
and they have an MVP candidate, and they have a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. It's really, really good.
Those things are totally true. It's rare that I'm the rain cloud on Seahawks Outlook, and sucks that I'm the last of the three to go here. It's funny. So basically, what I would say is if they won that game, I absolutely think that they would. It would prove to me that they could beat anybody, right? That they are capable of winning the Super Bowl, and I'm not convinced of that yet. The Eagles game certainly gave me some renewed hope about that. But and I will also say, if they beat the Jaguars, or hopefully when they beat the Jaguars, I think they absolutely win the rest of their games. I have a lot of confidence in their ability to beat the Rams at home, despite all the challenges with the Rams, and I think they can beat Dallas even with Ezekiel Elliott, and I think they can beat Arizona at home. So all that, let's even assume that happens for a second. That'd be fun, right? my like old curmudgeonly, 30 years of watching the Seahawks self feels like that Redskins game is going to just come back and just kick us in the ass. And that I still think we'll end up playing Philadelphia in Philadelphia for the NFC Championship, or if we went through something like that. And I think we're going to have a hard time. It's hard winning in the playoffs on the road against really good teams. And I hope to hell I'm wrong, but maybe if they get, I think that my most confident would be if they get the number 2 seed and the number 1 seed gets knocked off, then I'm all in. But, I maybe after 2 more weeks of seeing them play and really beat great teams like this, I'll come back and you guys can make fun of me, and I would love that. I'm not quite there yet. I haven't been able to quite get to that level of confidence. This specific game, is the one that really got my attention. Beating that Jaguars defense, you guys heard me talk about it. I have so much respect for that defense and how hard it's going to be for our specific offense to do well against them. If we manage to score 20-plus points against that team and come out there with a victory, I'll be singing a different tune next week for sure.
Okay, but listen, them making the NFC Championship, that's a pretty good season, no? Like, considering where we were after that Atlanta game, where we were after that Washington game. So, like, I don't think that's curmudgeon-y. Like, I think if that's what happens, that's the outlook, that's pretty good. Like, going into this Eagles game, I didn't think they were going to make the playoffs after that Niners game, and based on how the rest of the conference was looking. I think Softy tweeted that Eagles game just completely changed everything. That's how I felt coming out of that game. The whole game, I was just like, please don't blow it. Please don't blow it. Things are going too well. Please don't blow it. And Wentz goes that crazy ball down the field.
Oh, my God.
And I'm like, oh, God, it's happening. Not again. They finally played well. They're going to lose. But then they end up pulling it out. Byron Maxwell picks the ball off. And I don't know. My whole outlook on the team has completely changed. And if they go out and beat Jacksonville again, I'm with you. I'm probably going to get a little crazy, a little unreasonable, but the fact that we're having this conversation is such a good thing, because if we had this conversation last week, people would have looked at us like we had 3 heads. Right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I guess the last thing I'd ask you guys is, I mean, of the teams in the NFC, what's your perception of which would be the toughest for the Seahawks to beat on the road if they had to?
I've been thinking about this, and I don't have a preference between the teams that you're kind of thinking about are probably Philly, New Orleans, and Minnesota. Maybe the Rams. And for purely chicken shit reasons, I do not want to have to go play in LA, because I could not live with this team losing a playoff game in LA to the Rams. But assuming they get the division and everything, I think the only one that worries me, and it's a little weird because we just saw them beat them, but it's going to Philly, right?
Yeah.
And the only reason is New Orleans is indoors, Minnesota's indoors. If they have to go to Philly and play in the snow, I don't want any part of that. So for me, Philly just being outdoors, even though they just beat them, that would be the one that would make me the most worried to have to go there and play.
Yeah, that's kind of where my head's been as well. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I didn't walk out of that game against the Eagles thinking, oh, man, the Eagles are totally overrated. They sucked. I walked out of there thinking, Eagles are damn good, and the Seahawks just beat a damn good team. Like, Wentz made some throws. That throw you mentioned, tripping over himself that he threw it 50 yards downfield. That was, as far as I was concerned, that was the best play of the entire game. That was a ridiculous play. And then to follow it up with the touchdown he threw, like, those were both, like, crazy, crazy throws. Beating that team that can run, that can pass, that can defend the run, that can defend the pass in Philly, in the weather, I don't love those odds. And I forgot, I actually went and looked up Minnesota. I was like, oh, yeah, they'd be out in the cold too. I don't want to do another one of those games. Like, oh, no, they're in their big stadium now, so we don't have to worry about that. What about you, Jeff?
To me, yeah, you guys make good points on Philly. Wentz, even though Wentz only had 10 points, Wentz really impressed me. I came out of that game thinking, like, this guy is ridiculously good. He's going to be around for a while. And I was impressed with a lot of little things he did. I thought the coaching staff hurt Philly a lot in that game, more than the players almost. But to me, the team that does scare me is Minnesota. I know they don't have a great quarterback per se, although Keenum's playing very well this year. The thing that scares me is kind of the way the Rams used to beat Seattle. The Vikings are so well coached, and they're so coached up on defense. Zimmer, to me, has done an amazing job this year. They don't have much offensively. I know the receivers are pretty good this year, Thielen and Diggs, but the way that Zimmer coaches and the way that that defense can go, I think they can really give Russell a lot of problems. And I saw what they did to the Rams a couple weeks ago, where no team has just taken the Rams out of their game, even more than Seattle did, than Minnesota has. And to me, that team would be a really hard team to play against, just because of how good defensively they are. And it reminds me a lot of just the way like Jeff Fisher used to play against them, although their offensive line in Seattle is so much better. But to me, yeah, I think Minnesota still scares me a little bit, just maybe from that playoff game. I know it was in the frigid conditions. Blair Walsh against the Vikings, something about that scares the crap out of me.
Good point.
It's like karma that's out to them. I don't know. But yeah, I think Seattle can beat Philly in Philly. I know the snow would be bad and might negate some of their speed advantages, but I think they can win there. I think there are some schematic matches like the Seattle taking advantage of those corners. I think that was obvious. And I think New Orleans and the Rams would be beatable. Those are hard teams to beat right now just because how good they are on both sides of the ball. But yeah, I don't know. The Vikings scare me. I don't know if that's the best one, but they just
Well, the most poetic would absolutely be the Seahawks winning on like a 20-yard Blair Walsh field goal in Minnesota. I mean, let's all hope that happens for a little bit of fun. Although I don't know if I want to even wish for it, because God, can you imagine how it would feel knowing that if we're waiting for Blair Walsh to kick that field goal to send the Seahawks to the Super Bowl? Oh man.
I'm getting stressed out just thinking about it.
Right.
Anymore. I turn around every time he kicks.
I know. I really tried to get behind the guy.
Who could have seen Blair Walsh's struggles coming?
I know, right? Who could have seen Stephen Hauschka having a bounce back year?
Yeah.
We
Right.
need Nathan around Schneider or something, because maybe he needs the balance. David's had some good ideas this year. We need him around.
I actually liked the Blair Walsh signing at the time,
all right, I take that back then. Never mind.
Yeah.
Hey, well, guys, it's been fun. Good to be back and good to talk Hawks again. Just for folks listening, a reminder, please, if you haven't already, subscribe. You can click on it down there. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. The more people that subscribe, the more people that are watching. Bring in some great guests that we've brought in so far this year. Kenny Mayne, Danny Kelly. We've had Mina Kimes, Seth Wickersham. I mean, we've had a bunch of folks, Dave Bowling and so forth. But subscribe. You'll get notified when any of these shows start. Also, if you're not a patron for Hawk Blogger, please join. All the proceeds go to Ben's fund. As Evan mentioned before, trying to raise a bunch this year, had a goal of $20,000 to donate to Ben's fund. By joining and being a patron, you get insider access. You get access to a private Facebook page where you can talk to us, all that kind of stuff. It's fun. And you could do that at patreon.com, patreon.com/hawkblogger. So with that, guys, I wish you a wonderful rest of your evening, and go Hawks.
Go Hawks.